My older brother Caleb works in marine construction. He spent the last 12 years building and maintaining offshore platforms, wind turbines, scientific monitoring stations, weather buoys. He's not a guy who embellishes. If anything, he downplays things. He doesn't read horror, doesn't watch thrillers, doesn't even like ghost stories. But in late 2021, he told me something that stuck with me. This happened back in 2016, off the coast of British Columbia. Caleb and a structural engineer named Aaron were sent out to repair a semi-submerged research platform that had been damaged in a storm. It was a solo job, just the two of them, scheduled to last 6 days. The platform was 27 miles offshore, not visible from the mainland. It was basically a small floating lab, a square metal deck the size of a tennis court, with a raised central unit housing equipment, solar arrays, and a sleeping chamber for researchers. No plumbing, limited power, basic communications gear. They were dropped off by boat and left with a radio, tools, and enough food to get through the week. The first few days were uneventful. They replaced damaged panels, reinforced some cracked supports, and ran diagnostic tests on the submerged sensors. At night, they'd eat cold food, listen to podcasts, and try to sleep in the narrow bunks built into the station's core. On the fourth night, something changed. Caleb said he woke up around 3 a.m. to a strange noise. Not the usual creaking of the platform or sloshing water, but a soft scraping sound, like metal on metal. He sat up, thinking Erin was up early, but her bunk was empty. Assuming she was checking the instruments, he went outside. The deck was empty. The ocean was calm. He called out, but no one answered. Then he noticed something odd. The tool locker was open, and one of the long crowbars was lying in the middle of the deck, bent. Not broken. Bent, like it had been pried against something incredibly strong. He picked it up and turned to go back inside, and saw Erin standing in the doorway, pale and barefoot, just staring at him. When he asked what she was doing, she looked confused and said she didn't remember leaving her bed. She didn't remember opening the locker. Caleb figured maybe she was sleepwalking. They shrugged it off, but it kept happening. The next night, he woke again, same time, same sound. Only this time, it was Erin who heard it first. They both got up and went outside. The crowbar was gone, and the radio antenna had been partially unscrewed, wires hanging loose like someone had tried to take it apart with their hands. The night after that, things escalated. They heard footsteps, bare, wet ones, on the outer deck. They checked, found nothing, but kept hearing the soft slap of feet on metal. The weirdest part? The steps always circled the platform clockwise, never counterclockwise. Every loop was deliberate and slow, like something was pacing just out of reach. They stopped sleeping. Erin began recording audio logs at night, trying to capture the sounds. But the next morning, the recordings were gone. Deleted from the device. Not corrupted, just erased. Caleb confronted her, thinking maybe she did it in her sleep. She swore she hadn't. On the fifth night, just after midnight, the lights inside the station flickered and went out. Total blackout. The emergency lanterns wouldn't turn on. Caleb used a flashlight to check the electrical cabinet. Every fuse was pulled out and stacked neatly on the floor in a spiral shape. Erin hadn't left her bunk. He hadn't either. That night, they both lay awake, listening. At around 3:45, they heard something breathe just outside the hatch. 3 long, wet inhalations. Erin grabbed Caleb's arm so hard, she left bruises. He said it was the only time in his adult life he felt like a little kid again, terrified, helpless, waiting for something to open the door. The 6th morning, they sent an emergency ping on the backup radio. No voice contact, just a signal to pick them up. The retrieval boat arrived late that afternoon, but when the crew came aboard, one of them asked Caleb how many people had been on the platform. He told them 2. The crewman shook his head and said they'd seen 3 figures standing on the deck as they approached. One of them didn't move, just stood at the far edge, facing away until they got close, then was gone. Erin quit the job a month later and moved inland. Caleb still works on offshore structures, but he won't talk about that trip anymore. He doesn't laugh when I bring it up. He just says, "That platform's still out there. It's empty now, but sometimes the maintenance crew finds footprints, just one set, bare feet, walking in a circle." This happened during COVID lockdowns. Days bled into nights, and the silence in my neighborhood was unsettling. No traffic, no kids playing outside, not even the occasional bark of a dog. Everyone was indoors, hiding from a virus no one could see. But something about that silence started to feel unnatural, too quiet, like something else was out there, listening. I live in Suffolk County, not far from the edge of the Pine Hollow Preserve, a stretch of woods that used to be popular with hikers and joggers before the area got shut down after a few people went missing there. Rumors spread like wildfire, strange figures, gutted animals, weird sounds at night. Local authorities blamed wildlife and closed the area for renovations, but no one believed that, especially not the older locals who said that woods had always had bad roots. One night, after sitting in the dark watching the same TV show reruns for hours, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my hoodie, flashlight, and car keys. It was past midnight, but I needed out. Not out of boredom, out of some deeper pressure I couldn't quite explain. The air in my apartment felt thick, heavy. I needed to breathe real air. I drove with the windows cracked, no music, just me and the sound of tires on pavement. When I reached the old turnoff near Pine Hollow, I hesitated. I knew I shouldn't go in, not because I was scared, because I was curious. And curiosity has a price. The road into the woods wasn't blocked, just marked with a sun-faded sign. No entry, state property. The metal gate was missing entirely. I drove in slowly, gravel crunching under the tires until the road narrowed and I had to park. My flashlight beam cut through the trees as I started down the path. 10 minutes in, the forest swallowed me. No moon, no stars, just tall black shapes creaking gently with the wind. It's hard to describe what I felt next, like I was being watched, but not from behind, from below. The feeling grew stronger the deeper I walked, like the trees themselves were holding their breath. Eventually, I reached what I'd been half looking for, the old fire tower. It was metal, about 30 feet tall, barely visible until you were almost right under it. The platform at the top used to be where rangers watched for brush fires, but no one had touched it in decades. The staircase up was rusted, but still mostly intact. I don't know why I started climbing. Maybe I thought I'd see the stars from the top. Maybe I wanted to prove to myself I wasn't afraid. But the moment I set foot on that first step, the forest went silent. No wind, no leaves, no insects. It was like something had paused the world. By the time I got to the top, I could see far, miles probably, just a sea of black trees swaying slightly. I stayed there, breathing in the cold air. The quiet was oddly calming, until I looked down. There was something at the base of the tower. No sound, no movement, just a shape. Like a man, but stretched, elongated, as if it had too many joints. It didn't glow, it didn't shimmer. It just stood in the dark, like it belonged there more than I did. At first, I thought it might be a ranger. I called out, "Hello?" No response. I tried again, louder. "You okay down there?" Still nothing. Then, without warning, it took one step forward. I didn't hear it move. It was just suddenly closer. Another step, then another. My breath caught in my throat. I backed up, nearly tripping over a loose board on the platform. The thing, whatever it was, stopped. I watched it for what felt like an hour, though I know it couldn't have been more than 30 seconds. And then it looked up. I couldn't see eyes, just the sense that it was staring directly at me. I turned and ran. The descent was a blur. I barely felt my feet hitting the steps. I just knew that I had to get back to the car. When I hit the forest floor, it was gone, nowhere to be seen. I spun in circles with the flashlight, heart pounding, ready to see it a foot away, but there was nothing. Until I heard it. Not footsteps, breathing, right behind me. I didn't look. I just ran. The path had disappeared. Everything looked different now. Trees I didn't recognize, branches grabbing at my hoodie, the air colder than before. It felt like the forest was shifting around me, making sure I couldn't find my way out. Eventually, I tripped and hit the ground hard. The flashlight skidded out of reach and landed in a patch of moss, still lit. And in that dim cone of light, I saw something standing just at the edge of visibility. Tall, crooked, arms too long, head tilted at an unnatural angle. It wasn't moving. It was waiting. I don't remember getting up. I don't remember finding the car. All I know is that suddenly, I was back in the driver's seat, slamming the door shut, trying to jam the key into the ignition with shaking hands. The forest was completely dark behind me. Nothing chasing, nothing visible. But I know it was there. I didn't stop driving until I saw streetlights again, familiar buildings, the ghost of normalcy. I pulled into my driveway as the first hints of sunrise were brushing the sky. When I looked at my car the next morning, there were long scratches along the back window, not claw marks, more like fingernails. Scraping, as if something was trying to get in, but didn't need to rush. I haven't been back to Pine Hollow since. Sometimes I still hear that breathing when I'm alone in my apartment. And once, just once, I thought I saw it, standing at the edge of the woods behind my building. It didn't move. It didn't need to. It already knew where I lived. My name is Daniel. The story I'm about to tell you isn't mine. It came from my cousin Matt, who worked private security for almost 15 years before switching careers. He's not the kind of guy who jokes around. Stone-faced, always prepared, ex-Marine with a chest like a steel door. We'd catch up every few years, and he'd always have some new story. Drunk trespassers, creepy warehouses, the occasional wildlife encounter. But this one was different. It was the only time I saw him visibly uncomfortable. He told me the story one night over drinks, but only after swearing me to silence. Last month, he gave me permission to write it down, on the condition I don't name the location. He said it's better that way. It started in 2009. He was assigned to a short-term private contract in Northern Oregon. A real estate developer had just bought an old children's hospital outside a small mountain town. The building had been abandoned for decades, and it was tucked away in the hills, surrounded by dense forest. The company wanted to tear it down, but local officials required a 2-week inspection period for historical records and potential wildlife surveys. Matt's job was simple. Make sure no one messed with the place until the demo crew came in. 2 weeks, solo assignment, all expenses paid. He said yes without hesitation. When he first got there, he described the place as eerie, but not out of the ordinary. Brick exterior, boarded up windows, rusted doors. A lot of the medical equipment had been removed long ago, but he still found old gurneys, wheelchairs, and faded murals of cartoon animals in the halls. The power had long been cut, but he had a small generator, floodlights, a cot, and a heater he set up in what used to be the main reception area. The first 2 nights were quiet. He did routine perimeter checks, made notes, and kept a small journal. The only strange thing he noticed was the smell, like rotting wood and iron, which he chalked up to mildew and rust. But on the 3rd night, things changed. Around 2 a.m., he woke up to a distant echo. It wasn't loud, but unmistakable. Wheels scraping across tile, like a metal cart being pushed slowly down a hallway. He grabbed his flashlight and checked the camera feeds. Nothing. The hallway outside was clear. He searched the main floor with his sidearm drawn, but found nothing. Still, he noted the sound in his log. The next night, the noise came back. Same time, same sound. But this time, there was a second noise. A sharp tapping, like fingernails on glass. It came from the old children's wing. Matt followed the sound to one of the recovery rooms. Inside, the wall-length mirror was fogged, like someone had breathed on it. But the air was freezing. He wiped the mirror with his sleeve and found nothing behind him. That night, he moved his cot to the main hallway, closer to the exit. On the 5th day, he found something new. Near the main stairwell was an old playroom. He'd walked past it several times, but now the door was wide open. Inside, there were dozens of dusty toys, most broken or water-damaged. But in the center of the room was a small dollhouse, perfectly clean. Too clean. It looked brand new, but had no manufacturer logo or markings. He inspected it and found the interior furnished with tiny replicas of the hospital rooms. Every room, down to the murals and furniture, was recreated in miniature. Even his cot was there, with a little plastic figure that looked eerily like him lying on it. He didn't sleep that night. The next morning, he tried to call his supervisor but couldn't get a signal. His radio kept crackling with static. He packed his gear and waited near the entrance for someone, anyone, to show up. That night was the worst. At 3:17 a.m., all the lights went out. The generator didn't fail, it was still humming, but every floodlight and battery-powered bulb went dead. He turned on his flashlight and scanned the hallway. At the far end, just beyond the beam, he he saw something standing. It looked like a child, maybe 7 or 8, in a hospital gown soaked to the knees. It didn't move, just stood there with its arms limp at its sides. Matt shouted, raised his weapon, told it to back up. It didn't. When he stepped forward, it bolted into the darkness. He chased it through the corridor until it turned into a stairwell leading to the basement, an area he'd intentionally avoided. He followed, one step at a time, gun drawn. The air grew colder the deeper he went. When he reached the bottom, the beam of his flashlight flickered, and then he saw them. Dozens of small handprints covering the walls, some fresh, some old, all at child height. He turned and ran. Back upstairs, he grabbed his gear, smashed out a boarded window, and climbed out. He spent the rest of the night in his truck at the base of the hill, engine running, doors locked. The next morning, a supervisor arrived to relieve him. Matt said nothing. He handed over the keys and walked away. He never returned. The demolition went ahead 2 months later. The crew reported delays, equipment failures, electrical issues, but the building was eventually leveled. Matt never filed an incident report. When I asked why, he said something I'll never forget. Some places were never abandoned, he told me. They were left behind, with good reason. That's all he ever said.